Throughout this training, or at any time you need support, there are many ways to contact us. You can follow us on all major social media platforms or email us directly via our website, or you can click the Cancel Connect icon shown at the bottom of this slide on our website to book a consultation with one of our experts. So we'll kick off the define phase by understanding the process. This is the time for the team to understand which process or processes their improvement project will focus on, where it starts, where it ends, and all the stuff in between. Understanding the process is not about a right or a wrong answer. It's about the team creating a shared understanding of the process and the customer. This is not always as easy as it might seem. For many problems that have been defined, there are not clear boundaries. There may not be clear outputs and handoffs. In your workbook, you have a clean space for you to illustrate, using no words, the steps to making toast. This might seem trivial, but this exercise reveals the reality about how we collaborate to solve problems. Pause this video for a few minutes and draw your diagram.
I'm sure that some of your drawings are quite good, others maybe not so good, like mine, because let's just say they hide certain aspects of the toast making process. Some might be all about the toast, while others are all about the toaster. If you're an engineer, you might have drawn the mechanics of the toaster. Some drawings are all about people and visualizing the experience that people have. And others might be about the supply chain that goes all the way back to the store. What is obvious is that even though the drawings are wildly different, they all have something in common. Most have tasks and flow, that is, links between tasks. This makes visible how we think something works, and they reveal our various points of view.
We can somewhat measure the complexity by counting the number of tasks. Starting with a map of the process, we can break complex things into simple things and then bring them back together again. And this brings us to the topic of high-level process maps. Just like with your toast diagram, a high-level process map is a graphical display that shows the flow and steps in a process. Through your Greenbelt training, you will learn many different types of maps. Each map has its own purpose, its own benefits, and something about each map makes it unique. Additionally, maps can show different perspectives. A map can be a current state, which we use to understand how things work today, or a future state, which we'll use when we get to the improve phase to illustrate how things will work in our new improved process. Sometimes we can refer to the current state map as the as-is process map, and that's different from the should-be map. The as-is and the should-be are the difference between the procedure manual and reality. At this point, at the beginning of the define phase, the team will use a current state high-level map to understand the process, the customers, and to develop clarity around this project. And the team will use a map called the SIPOC. This is a small but mighty tool and should be used for every project. If I was stranded on a desert island and could only bring one CI tool, it would be a SIPOC. If my hair was on fire, I'd still do a SIPOC. What's different about the SIPOC from other process maps is that it's high level. It includes the supplier and inputs, as well as outputs and customers, and very importantly, it includes requirements.
Let's start nice and simple with the paper airplane process example. We'll talk through this in the same order that the team will create a SIPOC, which is not from left to right, but in a different order. We start off with the output, customer, input, supplier, and then the process, or OCISP.
We're a team that's been pulled together to improve the production of our paper airplanes, and the team agrees that the output of the process is a finished paper airplane. Who does the airplane go to? It goes to the customer who ordered it. The process starts when we receive our plain paper. That's our input, and it comes from the paper factory. That's the supplier of the input. Lastly, the team agrees on the high-level steps that it takes to turn that plain piece of paper into a completed airplane, and they illustrate it here in the P column. When you create a SIPOC in real life, the challenge can be to keep the team from diving into too much detail too early on. At this stage of the project, we want to stay high level. Just remember the SIPOC mantra, stay as high as you can, as long as you can. Rian, remember when we were teaching this in Amsterdam and we said, stay as high as you can, as long as you can, and they said, we intend to.
Not just in Amsterdam. Now let's do a little more realistic business process with our call center issue resolution example. The team agrees that this process ends when the call is resolved, so our output is a resolved issue, and that resolved issue is presented or delivered to the customer who called in with a problem.
Next, we move to the input, and the team agrees that the process starts when a call is received. The supplier of that call is the caller or the customer. In most transactional or service processes, the supplier and the customer are actually the same person. Now the team moves to the process steps. The rule of thumb here is to keep the process steps at a high level with no more than 5 to 7 steps max. The team has some discussion and decides that the 4 major steps are: first, understand the question, then discuss the details with the caller, research the issue, and then explain the resolution.
Now someone in the team says, but we don't explain the resolution to the caller. We send an email to the account manager and they call the customer. So the team revises their SIPOC to show the output is an email and it goes to the account management team. This is where it's important to understand that the customer of the process is not always the end customer or external customer, the one who pays us for our service. Internal customers are downstream processes or other parts of the business that receives our output. In our SIPOC, the C indicates the recipient of our output.
Let's add a little more complexity now with a cup of coffee example where we have multiple inputs and multiple outputs. The team identifies that the process ends when we have delivered a cup of coffee and an invoice to the customer who ordered the drink. The process starts when we have received an order, in person or using our app, from the coffee drinker. And in our project to improve this process, we will also include a different kind of input, the ingredients. An input to the process is the coffee beans and the artisan spring water that comes from the coffee bean producer. The high-level steps in the process are to add the water to the machine, add the beans to the grinding compartment, press on, add condiments, and then prepare the invoice.
A few members of the team are having a side discussion and the project leader asks them to share with the rest of the team. They point out that the people making the coffee and creating the invoice are part of the hotel kitchen staff and they don't deliver the coffee to the hotel guests, the end customer. They give it to room service, who has their own process to deliver it to the customer. This is a very important distinction as the needs of each customer may differ. And understanding what our customer needs, their requirements of our process, is absolute key for us to understand how to continue to improve.
When we're dealing with a large or complex process, many times it will require multiple SIPOCs to understand how it all connects. In fact, SIPOCs can be linked together so that the output and customer of one process is actually the supplier and input for the next, and so on and so on. While we've just walked through a few graphical examples of how the SIPOC is constructed, in reality, the first step to creating one is for the team to get together and sketch it out. The team collaborates and creates the model themselves. This is done in a structured brainstorming session and requires a lot of discussion and changes as the team shares and creates their understanding of the process.
A whiteboard or flip chart is used so the team have a central focal point and can all participate. The team may invite other subject matter experts to ensure the accuracy of the SIPOC. Each SIPOC element will be captured on a sticky note or with a dry erase marker so that changes can easily be made. As the team builds up their model, they express, reflect, and analyze to get clarity on the process. This activity produces a very rich experience for the team. So in reality, the SIPOC starts off messy, gets messier and messier, and then clearer and clearer. The result is a unified model that integrates diverse points of view.
So the team builds the map together and aligns around, gets their head around at a high level, the process that they will be improving. Except of course they use words and not icons. A little pro tip for the process column. On your stickies, use the basic structure of verb plus noun. For example, move boxes, complete form, submit request, sort data, etc. This eliminates a lot of confusion and unnecessary wording.
Once the team has collaboratively mapped out the process in SIPOC format, the next step is to document the raw, messy SIPOC using our template on your own. You will see cells to capture the process name and process owner, as well as cells to capture the other elements of the SIPOC. In addition, you will notice the light blue, light green, and yellow cells, which are there to capture requirements. Before we can complete the SIPOC, we'll first need to learn about these requirements. Customer, input, and business requirements will be covered in the next chapter, along with our SIPOC one-point lesson.
Take a few moments now to pause and review your notes to prepare for a quiz on Chapter 4, the process.
Dun, dun, dun. Welcome to Chapter 5, Requirements. Understanding requirements is the basis for understanding where we need to improve. What are the standards that need to be met for our customers, our people, and our business to thrive? These are the questions that we will address in this chapter.
We'll focus on requirements during every phase of DMAIC. In the define phase, we understand our opportunities to improve based on what the customer and the business need and want. In measure, we turn those requirements into something tangible and measurable. In the analyze phase, we focus on specific aspects of our process that are causing problems with us delivering those requirements. The improve phase focuses on designing our processes to deliver to the requirements. We test our products and processes to ensure that every requirement is met. And in the control phase, the requirements become our KPIs, our key performance indicators that we monitor regularly.
There are different types of requirements. A process improvement project will typically focus on a specific problem or opportunity with the output or business requirements. The input requirements addresses the standards and expectations of the input. Whether the input is a request, an order, raw ingredients, or parts, these inputs have to meet certain standards for the process to run well. This is all about the garbage in, garbage out concept, which you guys are all familiar with. Output requirements are all focused on the needs and wants of the process customer. Whether it's an internal customer or external who is receiving your process output, they are the only ones who can truly define what standards need to be met.
And we have to work to meet the customer or output requirements with consideration for the business. The business has certain goals and standards that it must meet in order to stay viable, profitable, growing, and with happy employees. Let's revisit our cup of coffee SIPOC and take a look at adding these 3 categories of requirements to our map. First, we'll look at the output requirements. Our customer doesn't want just any old cup of coffee. She has expectations for how quickly it's delivered, for the quality of the coffee, and for the value or the cost. And she'll expect the bill to be prepared quickly and accurately. And the business has to meet these requirements while meeting their own. The business requirements are that the company is profitable, that their staff is competent, happy, and safe, and that they run efficiently.
In order to do this, the process needs to start with good inputs. The order information must be clear and accurate, and our beans and water must be delivered on time, at a good quality and good value. These are very high-level descriptions of our requirements, and many times the team will start out at this high level of understanding and then we work to get it into more specific descriptions of what standards actually need to be met. In a domain project, we are focused on improving an outcome, improving an output requirement, and whether we are focused on an internal customer or an external customer or an internal business requirement, a core concept of Six Sigma is to keep the customer solidly in focus.
Our process customer is the most important perspective to understand. The customer is not dependent on us. We're dependent on the customer. The customer is not an interruption in our work, but he's the purpose of it. He's not separate from our process, but part of it. We're not doing the customer a favor by serving him or her, which is a common attitude, especially with internal customers. We need to understand that our customer is doing us a favor by giving us the opportunity to do our work.
The customer of the process are the only ones who can define what a good job looks like. For this reason, your customers know more about what your process needs to deliver than what you do. You cannot define it apart from your customers. What is a defect? What is considered on time? What is easy to use? These are all aspects of your process that we must understand from our customer so that we can prioritize our opportunities for improvement.
In your workbooks is a table that walks you through some questions to get you thinking about customers and their requirements. In the table on the left column, there are different jobs or roles. Consider these roles and think through the questions. For example, in the first row, you're a third grade teacher. Who would the end customer be? This would likely be the third grade student. What would the customer needs be? Who might an internal customer be? Maybe the office staff who collects your reports. What might the organization need? Take a few moments now to think through these questions to help you get your mind thinking about requirements from different perspectives.
The whole point in understanding requirements is so that we understand where we have problems or opportunities to improve. A problem or an opportunity is a gap between a requirement and an actual result. It's a need or a standard that is not being met currently. At this point, during the define phase of a project, the team may not have a specific problem in mind, or they may have a specific problem, but the actual current results may not be known yet. For example, they might know that operational costs are high, or customer satisfaction is low, which is pretty general usually. Or more specifically, that internal customers' complaints of too many delays with their deliveries. This is a specific problem, but there is no measure of the current performance which would show the gap. And another example could be the service level agreement with Butterfield Supply states that all emails should be responded to within an average of 24 hours. Last quarter average was 30 hours. This is a specific problem with a measure of the current performance or description of the gap.
You may start your project with direction from the sponsor to solve a very specific problem. For example, as we just heard, the service level agreement with customers states that all emails should be responded to within 24 hours. Last quarter average was 30 hours. In this case, the team would verify the customer requirement, and then in the measure phase, we'll determine how big the gap is between our current performance and that requirement. Or you might be given a general direction, and you'll need to discover the opportunity. In this case, the team will explore all requirements and identify the greatest opportunity that is manageable for the team. Either way, the team will have to identify balance requirements. For example, if our project is focused on improving the quality of the process output, we don't want to degrade our value. For example, we can't increase the price, and we don't want to slow the process down. We have to figure out how to improve quality while maintaining or improving our value and speed. There are a lot of people who will say that the sweet spot in the center does not exist. In fact, there are a lot of memes and posters that say quality, value, speed, pick two, meaning that you can't have it all. But that's the whole point of process improvement. It's to find a way to meet all requirements while balancing the needs of the business.
As we are beginning to discuss, understanding requirements will provide a solid foundation for the team. And they're not always easy to get. Requirements are very specific and measurable. This is how we can design our processes to meet them and how we monitor and maintain the process. But the challenge is that customers tend to be very vague. They don't provide you with a nice, precise list of their requirements. You have to research, listen, look downstream, and try and understand what they're really saying. When we understand the requirements, they must be stated clearly and simply. Here's a few guidelines. State one requirement at a time. Express in the positive. So we state what we'll do, not what we won't do. For example, instead of no reports to be sent by fax, the requirements might be all reports to be sent via email. Be specific and unambiguous. The requirements must be observable and measurable. So instead of saying respond quickly, we might say respond by noon the following day. And we state the standard to be met, not how we'll meet it.
Typically, we start with a general understanding of a requirement. For example, our customers want it fast, and it takes some work to understand specifically that fast to our customer means less than 24 hours from request to delivery. Or maybe the general requirement of easy actually means that they expect to get to the order screen in no more than 3 clicks. An accurate order might mean that the product color and size delivered is exactly what was ordered. A broad term like defect-free requires that you understand what the customer recognizes as a defect. From the perspective of the customer, customers don't tell you their requirements. They give you generalities mostly, and you have to listen and explore to really understand the specifics.
In your workbooks are some examples of general requirements. Pause this video now to try and come up with a way to state each requirement in a way that meets the simple guidelines. There will be many options and there is no single answer, but this activity will give you some practice.
We don't always know what our customers want, and a common mistake is for people within the organization to assume or think that they know. Did you know that 80% of companies believe that they give superior service, but only 8% of customers rate those companies the same?
Wow.
The point is that it doesn't matter if we think we're fast enough or good enough. It really only matters that our customers do, and that's why their input is so incredibly valuable.
So, the question is, what customer feedback do you need for your project? Do you need to understand all requirements, or is your project focused on a specific issue already? There are many different methods for gathering customer feedback, and in this section we will cover some of the most helpful ones. If we are focused on internal customers, the best methods, or one of the best methods, are actually to go and talk to them. Actively seek their feedback. Observe them using your output. It's most important to truly understand how the quality and timeliness of your output, or their input, affects their ability to deliver their output. However, it's a bit different gathering feedback from external customers. And one of the most common mistakes is assuming that we know the requirements without validating with the process customers.
Customer feedback is information coming directly from your customer about their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with your product or service. These comments are an important resource for figuring out how happy your customers are and how the business could improve its growth. Gathering this feedback can come from customer interaction, online forums, social media, email, review sites, phone calls, or surveys. Regardless, this feedback should be seen as a gift on how to improve your business.
In this section, we'll be talking about the importance of customer feedback. In Six Sigma circles, this is called the voice of the customer, and the different methods to collect customer feedback that you need to succeed. Data shows that about 4% of customers actually give negative feedback. This means that just because you are not hearing complaints does not necessarily mean that customers are happy.
Getting any sort of feedback from a customer is a gift. Feedback is an opinion of what your process is doing right and what you can do to improve. If you want your customers to stay and to grow with you, this is a critical piece of information to have. Improving the customer experience rates higher than anything else when customers are asked what can be improved. You can have an amazing product and great marketing, but if the customer of the process isn't treated well and has a bad experience, guess what? That customer is not coming back. If you're serving an internal customer, you're making it harder for them to serve the end customer, who will ultimately go elsewhere.
Customer feedback is gradually becoming the cornerstone of improvement and growth initiatives. Several theories of consumer psychology point to the fact that even a simple satisfaction survey appeals to your customer's desire to be cared for, reinforcing the positive feelings they might already have about your product and making them more likely to stay with you. The very process of asking questions or seeking opinions induces people to form judgments that otherwise wouldn't occur to them. They might not consciously realize that they love a feature unless you seek feedback about it. Customer feedback has become one of the primary drivers of long-term growth these days. Most organizations today jump at every opportunity to talk to the customer or learn about them. Businesses are spending millions of dollars on setting up feedback channels, emails, surveys, reviews, website analytics, and collecting data.
The pertinent question now is, how do you utilize these channels to actually learn from the feedback? Before you establish the viability of a channel, it's crucial to develop a clear picture of why you're collecting feedback. Are you seeking first-hand advice on product improvement? Are you building a new feature for which you're seeking the user's inputs? Have you been receiving a lot of complaints and you need to know more about them? Once you have the end goal clear, proceed to the tactical part. How do you collect feedback? There's no one-size-fits-all tactic to gain information from your users or your customers. Different situations require different methods of collecting customer feedback. For example, a survey form sent to an already disgruntled user will only make matters worse. A phone call might be better in that situation. Let's talk through a few methods of collecting customer feedback.
Process observation is about going to the process, finding out what is happening on the ground. The purpose is to observe the process in action, getting people talking to you about standards, systems, and what is important to them. It's an opportunity to learn from what is working well and not so well, what creates frustration or disappointment. Focus on how customers are using the product or service. What problems do they have? Is the process clear and organized and efficient? Observing customer behavior can provide much different information than a survey, for example. How people answer a question might be very different than their actions. We had a customer in the hospitality industry. They wanted to provide a fruit basket for their premium guests. They had sent out a survey to ask customers to provide their fruit preferences. Right before they were about to create the thousands of these fruit baskets, we suggested that they create a plan to observe their customers' preferences instead. For a couple of weeks, they had baskets of fruit in key locations, and they observed their guests, picking through the baskets and grabbing their picks. The results of the observations were very different than the survey data. While people might love fresh pineapple, it's not exactly the kind of fruit you put it in your backpack and take up to your hotel room for a snack.
Our grocery store client observed the walking path of their customers. Where are people wandering? Where are they backtracking? What items are too hard to find? Creating a map of the walking paths helped the store to understand the needs of the customers in a way that other methods would not provide. Identifying your process output and then watching the customer use or experience that output is really powerful and should be used, if possible, to gather customer insights.
A focus group is a small gathering of people, like 6 to 8 people. In an interactive setting, generally a room or an online video conference, where they discuss a specific subject under the guidance of a facilitator. It takes place in a neutral location, as opposed to a company's own offices. For example, so customers can feel comfortable saying what they really think about the products or services and discuss them. This is a great way to hear first-hand feedback from actual users and potential customers. Those who know how to run a focus group will build enough flexibility into the process to be able to make changes on the fly or dive deeper into a particular topic that may come up during the conversation.
A focus group is a method to ask people about their perceptions, opinions, beliefs, and attitudes towards a product, service, concept, or idea. Questions are asked in an informal group setting where participants are free to talk with other group members. As a rule of thumb, if you want to have a conversation with your customers that will help provide direction, pursue a focus group. If, however, you have well-defined questions with specific answers as options and need to reach a large group or multiple groups or customers, a survey may better suit your needs.
If you have a website, live chat is one of the most popular ways of getting feedback from your customers. It is simple and easily accessible. If your customer needs a fast way of response for your team, the easiest way for him or her to communicate with it without any overcomplications is by using live chat. Using live chat, you can learn what are the most common problems your customers have with the process. If you have a web presence or if you provide a product or service throughout a website, a live chat is a great method of gathering customer data live through feedback channels.
Probably the most popular channel for finding out about customer feedback is social media. Use your social media channels to find out what people think about your company, your product, or your service. It's important to engage in discussions with people who talk about your product or service. Thanks to that, your customers know that you care about them and that you value their opinion.
Social listening is a process of monitoring online conversations about your product or service. There are whole departments for businesses that take care of social listening these days, making sure customer expectations are met. Be on top of customer insights and make sure to dampen any situations that could hurt your brand. Express gratitude for those who are promoting and saying great things about you. If we don't listen to what our audience wants, we won't be able to connect with them. We won't be able to help or influence them. This rings true in our personal lives as well as in how we approach our audience on social and beyond.
All too often we're guessing, not listening. We're making tactical moves, not strategic ones. So who is your audience? How do they feel about not just your organization, but topics related to what you do? Which topics and trends are they passionate enough to discuss online? What do they truly want, and how can you connect with them more effectively? If these are questions you've asked before, then social listening is for you. If you have a dedicated team member who can focus on social listening, this is a very useful method.
Another very common way of collecting customer feedback is using a survey form. The one thing you have to always keep in mind here is to not get carried away and ask way too many questions. The more questions your survey has, the less time your respondent will actually spend on it. In other words, the more questions you ask your respondents, the more likely they will just speed through it, and the quality and reliability of your data will suffer. The longer the survey, the less time the respondents will spend on each question. The takeaway is to make the survey as short as possible. There's no ideal length for a survey. A few experts do say, however, that anything between 5 and 10 questions is a decent number.
To keep your survey short, a good rule of thumb to keep in mind is only ask questions that fulfill your end goal. Ensure that every question serves a clear purpose. If you don't intend to use the information, don't ask that question. The aim is to collect customer feedback and not to have them write an essay. For example, if you're surveying a customer who has just exited your paid plan, there's no point asking them if the onboarding was easy. Your only aim should be to understand why they are leaving and what you can do to prevent that. It's also important to start with open-ended questions. Let your customers surprise you. Multiple choice questions will give you answers based upon your own assumptions. If you really want to know what the customer is thinking, give them an open-ended question. So, when should we use form-based surveys to collect customer feedback? The best place to use this is when we want detailed inputs and have specific questions to ask. This should only be sent to an engaged user who you're sure would like to take the time to provide feedback to you.
Most of us are on our phones a lot, sometimes way too much. Make it super easy for customers to leave your feedback through a text. 90% of texts are opened within 3 minutes. So you know it won't take long before the response comes back. Sometimes a bit longer, ask my kids. Setting up an automatic text to say thank you and politely ask for feedback. Customers are constantly thinking of ways your product can work better for them. Maybe parts of your app do not have to have what they are looking for, or maybe the design could look a little bit better, or maybe they could find something that is broken. More often than not, they will not reach out to you on your support address. That happens only when the problem is big.
If you have an app, a great idea is to offer a survey while your customer is using your app. The survey can be prompted the moment a user has finished interacting with a particular feature in the app. Since the user is already in the process of using that feature, it's very likely that their feedback will be very precise and to the point and not ambiguous. Remember, your users are in the app for a specific reason. It's not a great idea to throw a long survey at them. Keep it to 2 or 3 questions that are relevant to the page that it's being displayed on. When you want a quick feedback from someone who has performed a certain action, a short in-app survey is a great option. Timing is critical though. You have to trigger the survey at the very moment a transaction ends, and the questions should be specific to what the user is using or has just used, and not about the product in general.
Next up is a social media group. Creating a group or a forum for your customers may be a great way of receiving feedback. A social media group can serve as a way to share experiences. Also, it can be useful in solving common problems. But more than anything, you can stay up to date with customers' expectations and know what they need. An online community can give your customers a sense of belonging to a group of people who want to make their work and life better or more productive. Create a group to reward your customers and make them feel special. For example, a group exclusively for people who have purchased your product and use your service. Groups are also great places to keep up with current events in your industry. Next up is the social media group. Creating a group or a forum for your customers may be a great way of receiving feedback. A social media group can serve as a way to share experiences. Also, it can be useful in solving common problems. But more than anything, you can stay up to date with customers' expectations and know what they need. An online community can give your customers the sense of belonging to a group of people who want to make their work and life better and more productive. Create a group to reward your customers and make them feel special. For example, a group exclusively for people who have purchased your product or use your services. Groups are also great places to keep up with current events in your industry. The group can provide value for the customer. A group lets your best customers or advocates connect with each other. If you have an internal customer or diverse team of people working from different locations, create a group to keep in touch with your internal customers, stakeholders, and to promote a strong company culture of continuous improvement.
Most people check their email on their phones 3 times a day. This can be very effective for sending a quick autoresponder email with a one-click feedback. Consumers are happy to give feedback emails and just need a little reminder to do so. Transactional emails are the ones that you receive right after signing up for a new service or upgrading to a new plan and so on. Basically, these are emails triggered by a certain interaction between the user and your app. Often, transactional emails are treated as a necessary notice, and companies don't put too much effort into creating a dialogue with the customer. Sometimes these emails lack the aesthetic appeal of a website, and they tend to deliver an inconsistent customer experience, and that's a shame.
That said, transactional emails can be a great tool to develop a dialogue with customers. Asking the right feedback question in these emails will certainly get a good response. In the example on the left, you'll see that Viking does a great job at this by asking users to rate their delivery just after they've delivered a product. In situations when you do not have a question to ask, it's a good idea to give your users a very easy way of getting in touch with you. A company called Buffer does this well. See the example on the right.
So when should we use transactional emails to collect customer feedback? When a user does something significant, signs up, upgrades to or exits a plan, and so on, you can send them a quick one-liner question or a short multiple-choice question. The key is to gain an insight at the right time without burdening them with too many questions. Staying in touch with them and helping to solve current problems gives you insight into what's the biggest issue and what needs to be improved.
As crazy as it might seem, an old-fashioned phone call can do wonders.
Oh, on a side note, I talked to my son the other day and said, "Why don't you return my phone calls?" And he said, "Oh, I don't use my phone for that."
Well, welcome to... yeah. Anyways, but using an actual phone number has a very personable feel to it. If there's a negative complaint and you have the ability to call as a follow-up, most situations can be resolved easily, and the customer will feel satisfied and taken care of.
If you truly want to understand someone, you'll have to talk to them. Surveys and other forms of feedback may give you tons of data, but they don't reliably tell you what a person truly feels about your product or service. This is when you need to reach out to your customers through the phone. It's a personalized and proactive method that generates the best responses. Hearing a person's voice and tone is the best way to sense what they actually think about your product or service. A call will help tell you what gets them excited, what really makes their lives easier. The key here is that the person calling the user should genuinely want to understand their problem, with an effort to create solutions. That's what we do in continuous improvement. In other words, when collecting customer feedback, we're not doing it because we have to do it. We do it because we care. It's not a sales call.
So when do we use phone calls to collect customer feedback? Scheduling calls with your customers, talking to them and making sense of feedback, which is not as structured as entries in a form, is a lot of hard work. The key here is to focus on those who can give you the best feedback to improve your product or service. It makes sense to do phone calls with those customers who have deep knowledge about the area you operate in and can give you actionable feedback. This is not a good avenue when you want to reach out to a lot of people at the same time. A Net Promoter Score survey is the simplest question you can ask your customers. How likely are you to recommend us to a friend or a colleague? It is basically a method to measure your customer's sentiment about your product.
People who rate you as 0 through 6 are known as detractors. Those who rate you as 7 or 8 are known as passives. And those who give you a 9 or 10 are known as promoters.
Awesome!
Net Promoter Score, or NPS, is the percent of promoters minus the percent detractors. There's a workbook example there. Let's take that example and say there are 100 respondents. 10 responses were in the range of 0 to 6. Those are our detractors. 40 were in the range of 7 to 8, the passives. 50 responses were in the range of 9 to 10 are promoters. So NPS, 50 divided by 100 times 100, minus 10 divided by 100 times 100 equals 40. The worst score you can get is negative 100, and the best score you can get is plus 100. Apple uses NPS surveys to find detractors and improve their retail store experience. Whether a customer made a purchase or scheduled an appointment to try an Apple Watch, they email a survey to rate the in-store experience. Remember, any score above 0 is good, anything above plus 50 is excellent, and over 70 is considered world-class. The greatest advantage of NPS is its simplicity and ease of use. It can be set up in minutes and is easily understood by everyone in the organization. It also makes it very easy to compare yourself with industry standards.
So Claire, when should we use NPS to collect customer feedback?
Well, when you want to understand the general sentiment of your users about a transaction, you can use NPS for any of the touch points that the customer might have with the team. Sales, customer support, etc. For example, it's a good practice to send an NPS survey after a support request is resolved. So general feedback at a specific point in your process, that's what your NPS is for.
Excellent.
The last method that we'll cover here is the suggestion board. Suggestion boards take collecting feedback up a level. They allow customers to collaborate on ideas with not just the company, but also with other customers. These boards allow users to create feedback posts which can be upvoted or commented by other users. Top posts that have been upvoted or highly commented can help you discover what the majority of your users need. The best thing about suggestion boards is that the ideas that had been suggested by some customers became popular ideas among others who hadn't thought of the benefits those ideas could bring. Lego Ideas is one of the best examples of how customer insight can be used for product development. Lego enthusiasts can easily submit their own designs on this mini site. The projects gathering more than 10,000 votes from the community go through a Lego review and are selected to become new sets if the review is favorable.
Results take some time to develop, and feedback is not to be accumulated immediately. You'll have to wait until there is enough feedback so you can determine which ones are popular to your customers as a whole. So Claire, another question.
Yep.
When should we use suggestion boards to collect customer feedback?
Okay, this is not something you use always, but when you're looking for new ideas from your customers, it's a great idea. You should start with inviting customers who know your product or your service well. They'll be in a better position to suggest improvements or new features. After you have a few ideas on the board, you can start inviting more users. They can upvote or comment others' ideas, even if they don't have one. Just as any time we're collecting customer data, once you've collected the feedback, you want to pay attention to the next step is to analyze the data and take actual steps to make things better for all stakeholders and customers.
Cool. So we've covered a lot of options at a high level. In this table, we give you a summary of the methods that we discussed and a little more guidance on when to use them. Most often, teams will use some combination of methods to gather feedback from their customers. And then the next step is to synthesize and prioritize that raw feedback.
In summary, whatever your experience with customers is, and no matter what type of feedback you receive, it's always helpful to build a better customer experience, but also to improve the process. If you listen to people, you'll be able to deliver the best results and satisfy customers' needs.
Often, our loyal customers would have developed an expertise of our product features. Some of our users understand the product or service as much as the internal experts do. Process improvement team meetings can only take you that far. The real insight comes from the ones who use your output regularly. No matter how hard you try to empathize with them and put yourself in their shoes, your process customers will always have some ideas that you did not think of. So before we start brainstorming solutions, let's follow the advice that our customers give us. Not only will our customers appreciate our willingness to listen, but we will set ourselves apart from the competition. as a business that genuinely cares. The bottom line is, customer feedback is extremely important for improving and growing businesses. Making processes to gather reviews and feedback from as many places as you can is the only way to truly understand your customer requirements. It has been our sincere pleasure being with you through this part of the training, and we thank you for your dedication to creating a better workplace and an environment that you can truly enjoy.